Let me be straight with you. No fluff, no filler. I've been covering the Raiders for a long time. Long enough to tell the difference between a franchise that's just going through the motions of a rebuild and one that's actually pouring real concrete into the foundation. And honestly, for the better part of the last several years, every single time I sat down to talk about this team, there was this annoying little voice in the back of my head whispering, "Don't get too excited, pal." Because the hope always got messy. Always. Usually right around week 6, like clockwork. So when I say this offseason feels genuinely different, I need you to understand, I don't throw that phrase around carelessly. I know exactly how it sounds. Every fan base on the planet hears, "This year is different every spring without fail." It's basically an NFL tradition at this point. But the early footage and practice photos coming out of Raiders rookie minicamp have genuinely shifted something in the way I'm thinking about this franchise. Not a little, a lot. And I want to walk you through exactly why. Piece by piece, because the full picture is, honestly, more compelling than any single headline coming out of Las Vegas right now. Let's start with the image I haven't been able to shake. Fernando Mendoza, number 15, silver and black, standing on that field in Las Vegas for the very first time as the Raiders quarterback. Now look, I get the practical reality here. He's not walking in and immediately taking over the huddle like he already owns the building. That's not how this works, and nobody with any sense is claiming otherwise. But there is something about the way this young man carries himself out there. Locked in, present, genuinely fired up, and not in the way that looks rehearsed or performed for the cameras. He looks like a player who has spent years preparing specifically for this moment and showed up ready for it. Not auditioning nervously for a role he's not sure he deserves, but stepping into one he's been quietly building toward his entire career. That distinction matters more than most people stop to appreciate when they're evaluating a young quarterback's long-term ceiling. Confidence that has been earned reads completely differently on camera and on the field than confidence that's simply assumed. Mendoza carries the earned kind. You can see it in his posture. You can see it in his eyes. And that alone tells me something important. But here's the detail from that first day that I genuinely cannot stop thinking about. And before you wave it off as some minor equipment observation, stick with me, because it is absolutely not minor. The shield, or more precisely, the absence of it. And hey, quick pause here. If you're a diehard Raiders fan like me and you've been waiting for a season like this one, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Hit that like button too. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know, and I want to keep bringing you this level of breakdown all season long. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're just getting started. Mendoza came onto that practice field without a visor on his helmet. Neither did any of the other rookies. And head coach Klint Kubiak made the reasoning behind that decision completely and explicitly clear weeks before camp even opened. In this organization, under this coaching staff, you do not simply get to wear the shield on your helmet because you were drafted. You don't get it because you signed a contract. You don't get it because of your reputation coming out of college or because of your draft slot. You earn it. Through OTAs, through training camp, through every competitive rep in every practice until this coaching staff looks at what you have actually done and decides you've demonstrated enough to deserve it. That is the stated policy. And it was visible and real and unmistakable from the very first moment of the very first practice. I want to stay here for a second because the casual version of this story treats it like a fun motivational detail and moves on. It is not a detail. It is a diagnosis, a precise and unflinching diagnosis of everything that quietly corroded this franchise's culture over the last several years, and a very specific prescription for fixing it. Think about the environment that existed inside that building before Kubiak arrived. Players came to Las Vegas with job security basically already baked into their reality. The organization's tolerance for underperformance had been stretched so many times by so many failed experiments that the actual standard of what it meant to genuinely compete for your roster spot had quietly dissolved. Nobody was being held accountable in any real, tangible, daily way. And here's the thing about comfortable losing that nobody talks about enough. It is the absolute worst kind of losing. Because it looks functional from the outside right up until the moment it completely and catastrophically isn't. Kubiak isn't issuing accountability memos. He isn't gathering the team for motivational speeches about culture and standards. He's making accountability physical, visible, daily. The shield sits in a cabinet until you've earned it. Every player in that building sees that every single morning when they suit up. That is not motivation through words. That is culture through action. And there is a massive difference between those two things. Words get tuned out eventually. Cabinets don't. The first overall pick. Let that sink in. The Raiders had the #1 pick in this draft. Let that fact sit with you for a moment, because it's important context that shouldn't be glossed over. Having the first pick means you lost more than everybody else last season. It means the previous approach failed, not partially, not in a fixable way, but comprehensively. It means the foundation being built right now absolutely cannot afford to be cosmetic. It has to be constructed with honesty, with real rigor, and with genuine, unflinching evaluation of who belongs on this roster and in what role. And for the first time in a very long, very painful stretch of difficult seasons, I actually believe this franchise has the right pieces aligned simultaneously. A head coach with a clear philosophy and real organizational staying power. A quarterback who fits the system and carries genuine franchise-level potential. A front office building intelligently without the kind of panicked, desperate shortcuts that create salary cap nightmares and roster holes 2 years down the road. All three of those things existing simultaneously in the same building, pointed in the same direction. That is rarer than most people stop to appreciate. The Raiders have it right now. Right now. And that matters enormously. Byron Crawford. The pick people are dramatically undervaluing. Let me spend some real time on Byron Crawford, because I think a significant portion of the conversation around this selection has been operating entirely at the surface level, and I want to go considerably deeper than that. 3rd round, Auburn edge rusher. And before you settle into whatever preconceived idea you've already formed about what a 3rd round edge rusher represents in terms of ceiling and long-term impact, hold on. Let me walk you through what I actually saw on his tape, because it genuinely reframed my thinking about this pick. The first thing that jumps off the screen before you even get into technique is pure physical information. Crawford plays close to 6'1" at the edge rusher position. That kind of length is a real asset, but historically, it almost always comes with a trade-off in movement quality. Taller pass rushers tend to sacrifice lateral quickness and directional agility to accommodate their frame. Crawford doesn't make that trade. The way he redirects his momentum, changes direction, closes on a target, processes information on the move, and adjusts his path accordingly. It's elite movement for someone built the way he is. That specific combination, elite length paired with elite movement athleticism, is genuinely rare at this position. When you see it in a prospect, you take notice regardless of where he ends up going in the draft. Where Crawford's developmental profile gets really interesting is in his actual approach to the pass rush. He is not a one-trick athlete trying to win purely on speed and hoping he gets to the quarterback before the offensive lineman gets set. What I see on tape is a player who already carries a real conceptual library of pass rush moves. Double hand swipes, a ghost outside speed move, skate jumps, swim moves from the interior. Multiple distinct concepts being applied within the same game against real competition. That tells me something important about how he thinks about this position, because most college edge rushers at this stage of development have found one thing that works and lean on it relentlessly. Crawford is already working variations, already trying to solve the offensive tackle problem from multiple angles with multiple tools. Now, the consistency isn't there yet. The timing on some of the moves is still off. When he goes up against Monroe Freeling, himself a first-round pick, the setup on his cross-chop move isn't convincing enough, and Freeling handles it without much difficulty. But the thing that matters is not the outcome of that specific rep. The thing that matters is that he's attempting that move at all against that level of competition with the conceptual awareness that this kind of technical approach requires. That is not a raw athlete guessing his way through college football. That is a player with genuine pass rush instincts, who simply hasn't yet been in the right coaching environment to sharpen those instincts into reliable weapons. And that is exactly where Rob Leonard enters the conversation. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. If you give Rob Leonard a defensive lineman with real movement traits, real pass rush instincts, and the physical tools to work with, he will develop that player. That's not blind optimism. That's following the documented evidence of his coaching career and trusting what it tells you about what happens when he gets the right raw material. Crawford is precisely that raw material. The movement quality is there. The instincts toward technical pass rushing are already showing up on tape. The length and arm strength that makes sophisticated hand fighting possible are already there. What he needs is the kind of specific, detailed, consistent coaching that takes those existing tools and makes them genuinely dangerous at the NFL level. Leonard is built for exactly that kind of work. And I think this pick looks very, very good 3 years from now. One more thing worth saying directly: positional value is not a minor factor in draft evaluation. The same physical profile and developmental trajectory at a different position in this draft produces a dramatically different draft slot. Those movement traits in that frame at running back, round 5 or 6 maybe. At tight end, similar. At edge rusher, he's in the top 90 picks every single time, because the position is that premium and the market correctly prices those rare physical combinations accordingly. That is not inflation. That is the NFL accurately identifying how genuinely scarce edge rushing talent with Crawford's physical foundation actually is. Tyree Wilson, the honest version. Before we get into this, seriously, if you're finding this breakdown valuable, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about this Raiders roster. I read every single one, and if you're not subscribed yet, now is genuinely the time. This off-season coverage is only going to get deeper. Tyree Wilson has been speaking publicly since the trade became official, and some of what he said deserves an honest, straightforward response rather than polite nodding. He acknowledged that trade discussions had been happening behind the scenes for some time before anything became public, and that both sides navigated that process with genuine discretion. Nothing leaked. Nothing became a media circus while conversations were ongoing. That is a mark of real organizational professionalism, and it deserves to be acknowledged openly before getting into the harder part of this. I genuinely wish Tyree Wilson well in New Orleans. I mean that without a single drop of sarcasm or bitterness. He is a person navigating a professional situation that didn't work out in one environment. And I hope he finds the right context to show what he's genuinely capable of. But I also owe the honest version of this to anyone following this franchise seriously. He was a deeply disappointing pick, 7th overall. In a draft where that selection carries franchise-altering weight, that pick is supposed to change a team's entire direction. Instead, it represented multiple years of competitive opportunity that the Raiders simply cannot get back. That is the honest evaluation, and it needs to be said plainly, even if it's uncomfortable. Where I push back on Wilson's public comments is in his stated reasoning for preferring New Orleans going forward. He talked about wanting stability, feeling genuinely valued by the Saints, wanting to move away from the coaching turnover cycle in Las Vegas. And I hear that. The skepticism was earned through real experience. I'm not dismissing it.